I believe we don't need to give any introductions for ourselves. People know, people who are in TESOL Ukraine know me, but for those participants who don't know me, I am happy to announce that this wonderful event is organized by the RELO office, Regional English Language Office of the U.S. Embassy, and TESOL Ukraine Professional Association. So those people who are participants for our today's webinar, and I believe who will enjoy greatly the content, please join our association, and you will have you will have an opportunity to participate in many wonderful, interesting events prepared together with our time-tested partners, RELO office. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena, and I can say a brief introduction. So my name's Lottie Baker. I was here last week. I've met many of you. I am in the Regional English Language Office in Kyiv, Ukraine. Right now I am sitting in Washington, D.C. We are very happy to support this webinar with our partners, our long-term partners, the TESOL Ukraine, and also with our America House English Language resident, so Meagan Abrahamsson. So this week, we are going to focus on conversations about career development. This is another topic, as with the topic last week on project-based learning, that I think is applicable to many of you. Some of the best ways to motivate our students in the classroom require them to find their voice and purpose, and this is what happens in conversation in career development clubs. So without further ado, I'll introduce Meagan very briefly for those of you who haven't had the pleasure of working with her yet. So Meagan is originally from Detroit. She is currently the virtual English language resident for America House Kyiv. She is working right now from Palermo, Italy. Meagan's been teaching ESL for the past 10 years in various countries, the United States, but also Honduras, China, Australia, and Italy now. She's also has experience teacher training, creating and facilitating teacher training programs, as well as experience as a virtual English language fellow for teachers in North Africa and in the Philippines. So she's done many, many different things. We're very pleased and honored to have Meagan with us today, and I hope you enjoy the webinar. So with that, take it away, Meagan.
Thank you so much, Lottie, and thank you, Lena, for introducing TESOL Ukraine and the RELO offices. It has really been probably the most life-changing experience that I've had to be able to work with you all, and it's really great to be able to have this type of community and community of practice. And I'm really glad to welcome everyone here. If it's your first TESOL Ukraine webinar, you guys are in the right spot. It's always nice to be able to reach out to other professionals who are in our field, just to always brush up on your skills and learn a little bit more about how we can continue to motivate our students and to really, I guess, confirm that that education is the most important thing to secure the future success of our youth. And I think that that is definitely very important all over the world, but especially in Ukraine right now. And so I am very excited to be able to give this webinar to you all. It's about facilitating career development and conversation clubs. So let's get started. I'm really excited to see that all of you guys are introducing yourselves in the chat box. And if you haven't done that yet, feel free to do so. Also, to make this as interactive as possible, if you continue to type in any answers to any questions I might pose during and throughout this presentation, that would be really, really amazing. you know, we all bring so much information and experience and knowledge from our own professions as teachers that it's really great to be able to have these types of opportunities to be able to share that. And being virtual definitely helps as well, so that we can all connect from so many different places. So as Lottie mentioned, I am from Detroit, Michigan. My master's is in international studies, focusing on education, languages, and TESOL certification. This is what I love doing, and I'm so glad to have this opportunity once again. So thank you all. Just to give you a little bit of idea about the reason for doing this webinar on this topic is because it might be a really great idea to think of, oh, let's do an English club, but to get from the idea until when it actually happens, there are a lot of steps that are in between. And I am very familiar with creating clubs, and that's actually what I'm doing with America House Kyiv, Lviv, and Odessa right now. So I am very well versed in understanding the process of from the idea until the facilitation and monitoring, evaluation, and recording that comes at the end. So I'm happy to share that information with you all, and I hope you will find it useful. So there are 6 steps that I thought of that I think would be very important throughout the process of creating to facilitation. Also starting at the needs assessment in order to reach a wider audience and to get zeroed in on who is going to be attending your clubs. It's also important to be able to understand the components of engagement, particularly in regard to an online classroom setting, which hopefully we won't be having to do this for much longer, but as you know, the past 2 years with COVID and the war going on right now, but we have no choice but to have to do this. So we'll have to continue educating through these ways, and it's really great that we're able to do so. And then we'll just get down to it and start planning the clubs. So I hope you guys are ready for this journey, and yeah, we can get started. So just a little warm up to type in the chat box. If you could tell me, have you ever participated in any type of English language club before when you were a student? Or have you facilitated an English language club before? It doesn't have to be speaking or career development. It could be a book club, a journaling club, anything that's in the English language as a student or for your students. So I'm interested in hearing about if you guys have participated. And then also you can tell me what was the topic and what are the benefits of creating these kinds of clubs. And as much as there are benefits, there are probably a lot of obstacles as well. And so it's important to be able to understand what those obstacles are so we can try to find out the best way to overcome them. Okay, Serhi said discussion club, debate club. Yeah, those are definitely popular ones. Very interesting. Hannah is facilitating Teachers Movies Club. Yeah, we can't forget about Movie Club. Those are really, really great. Window on America and Poltava. Nice, wonderful. Okay, you're part of the American Spaces group already. Wonderful. Okay, and I'll keep watching the chat box to see what else you guys post. But that's good. That tells me that you guys are familiar with that, and so it won't be such a a strange process for you guys. And you guys can also share in the chat box maybe if you have some tips as well for us. Reading clubs, movie club. Yeah, reading clubs are great. Okay, so Hannah, unfortunately, you didn't have the chance to participate, but now that you're a teacher, you will have a chance to facilitate. So how do we get there? Of course, first is the idea to have it. And then the 6-step process, I would say, would be designing for your audience. So really you have to think about who your target audience is and how you're going to design for that. Then you have to think about some different themes within the club or within the different sessions that you will be having to help plan it and set that in a calendar. Next up, we have advertisement and registration, which you guys are all familiar with because you registered for this webinar. So yeah, those are really great resources to use in creating clubs that people are going to actually attend, because if you put all of this work into creating it, you don't want it to just go to waste. It matters how many participants you get. After, you have to do some research and some planning, and I'm going to be showing you guys how I do my research and planning. Facilitating, that's the fun part. That's what I'm doing right now. Engagement is also important. How do you keep your participants engaged? And then finally, another step that we might forget about in the end is recording, monitoring, and evaluating, because we want to see you know, if these types of clubs are successful, what are we doing? How can we continue to make this sustainable so that we'll be able to continue these types of clubs in the future? All right, so the first step in designing for your audience is I think maybe as teachers, I'm not sure if it's safe to say, but the KWL chart has been around for ages, such a long time. But I'm not sure if you are familiar with the KWHLAQ chart. So the way that that's different is there are 3 more letters on there. And the reason for doing that is just to make things a little bit more specific into what you want to find out. So this is for contextualization. What do you want to know? What do you know first? What do you want to know? How will you find out? What you have learned? What action will you take? And what further questions do you have? So this is a little bit more elaborate in terms of not just trying to figure out what you know and what you learned, but the important component to me, in my opinion, is the action that you take. And so you can see with the little stars here on the infographic as well, what are some of the things that you could be doing to really zero in on this learning process in terms of creating the club. So for example, what you want to know, just the question that you have is, what type of conversation or what type of club would my target audience be most interested in having? And then you can go through the next steps to be able to really find out that information. So for the needs assessment, it takes a little bit more consideration as well. You have to think about what content you have, what kind of access you have to this content. Luckily, if you do have constant internet access, a strong internet connection, and you're able to facilitate these online classes, then that means that you have all of the access to these online resources. And I will show you my favorite ones that are coming up. The learner characteristics. Learner characteristics can mean what kind of a background these participants are coming from. So it takes the age into consideration. It takes their access to materials into consideration. Sometimes it can be harder if you're dealing with participants who come from a more rural or lower income setting. They might not have a constant Wi-Fi connection or maybe access to technology as well. And that's the next component here for available resources. So if you were in person in the classroom, you might still be just using a blackboard, and that's okay, but we have to take those things into consideration. And then finally, your desired outcomes. So this is a little bit like backwards planning, where you have to think about what do you want your participants to be able to do at the end of this club. So if you're planning a reading club, you want them to be able to go from A2 to a B2 reading level. And those are things that you can easily find out. What does that mean, A2 to B2? Maybe they're able to read and understand more things about food or eating. And there's the Common European Frameworks website that has all of the details about what that means. So when you're making your desired learning outcomes, it's very explicit in terms of what does progress really mean? It's nice and it's easy to say, I want them to get better at reading, but more specifically, what type of content are you more interested in getting them to be more familiar with? Is it digital media literacy? Is it something about, journalism or graphic design? So there are lots of things you have to think about to try to understand the audience and understand what is it you really want out of it and what you have, and then to be able to start planning. And it seems like a lot of things to take into consideration, and it is, but I really think that if you spend the time doing this in the beginning, it's just going to help you so much throughout the process. What are the types of things that we can do for needs assessments? So in order to find out what our participants need, we can have a casual conversation with them. That just means asking them face-to-face or over a phone call. You can do some research, type in a Google search or try to get some information that way. You can also have a look at the observe a classroom. So some types of information that you will be able to find out from a classroom observation would be, what English language proficiency do they already have? What types of, what level are they currently at, so that you know what type of content to provide. And then maybe something else that you could deduce from an observation would be that the students might be a little bit timid to share, to speak, to share their thoughts and their opinions. And so there are specific activities and exercises that you can do that will allow them to get out of their shell a little bit and to make the classroom more comfortable, where they do feel like they are able to make those mistakes that are required for the learning process. You can also find out what your students need or participants through surveys, interviews, and focus groups. So focus groups, it's like a casual conversation, but with specific questions for a smaller group of people. So that one is very useful as well. All right, now I'll get into the nitty-gritty, which means just the details. The second step that I do when considering conversation and career development clubs are the themes. And the way that you can decide on the themes would be to do those things like create surveys. So you can think of some different ideas about, so for example, let's talk about conversation club, this one on the right. So what we would do at America House is think about what are the holidays, or what are things going on currently? What are things going on in the news? What are things going to be interesting for and relevant for the learners, for the participants? And so in February, we did Black History Month. We talked about what is Black love? Why is this important? Why is this relevant in our world today? And then also, if you think about in a conversation club, the first step of having a conversation with someone in a foreign language is to be able to introduce yourself. So it doesn't necessarily mean that that's just for beginner level students. When you are any English language proficiency level and you are speaking English to anyone, really, you're going to still have to introduce yourself. And the more proficient that you get, the more advanced your description of yourself should be. So you can really expand on your answers for that and practice that during that time. We also did thank you letters, expressing gratitude topic. Because of the war and with people from Ukraine having to flee the country, we decided that combating loneliness and cultivating meaningful connections would be interesting topics for the participants, as well as, for the same reason here, adjusting to new environments and developing an infinite mindset. So something else that we do is just always conducting needs assessments regularly. So for example, at the end of my sessions, I always tell the participants, click on this survey if you would like to, if you have any ideas of topics that you're going to be interested in, because you don't want to create content that no one is interested in. You know, you might be interested in it yourself, but if the participants aren't interested, they're not going to register. You're not going to have anyone there. And so it's always important to have that continual feedback from the participants. So I just put in a Google form, they click on it, I have some topics, they can tick, and I'll show you what this looks like in the next coming slides. But there's also an option where they can write in something else that they're interested in. If one thing, you know, it's not specifically listed in the examples that I have on there. Career development is a little bit different because it's a little bit more structured. So for career development, we start off with trying to understand our creativity and our personalities. We did a really fun one where we talked about our purpose and what our meaning is in our lives, to try to understand if we are in the right industry or if we need to try to make a change to a different industry that would be more fulfilling for us. And then we started talking about some different application styles and components, how to write a personal statement, other types of topics. Actually just did today was writing an academic CV, what that should look like in the English language if you're applying to an English language speaking company or in an English language speaking country. Also topics like cover letters are really important. Practicing for interviews is really important. Understanding LinkedIn is really important. Your profile, how to look for a job, how to network using LinkedIn. And even if you think, hey, I'm not an expert on that, how am I going to be able to relay that information to the participants? There are so many resources online that if you just do like a basic Google search or you type in on YouTube, then you'll be able to quickly learn that information. And in the process of facilitating that class, you are both going to be learning together. So it's a win-win situation. So I would always recommend don't be scared if there's something on there that you don't feel like you're an expert in, because this is the time to get that practice. And many times as teachers, we become more proficient in themes and topics the more that we teach them. Isn't that right? That's the great thing about teaching. All right, so next up comes the calendaring. We have to think about what is realistic. Okay, so we have our themes, we know who our audience is, what is going to be a good time of the day for them? Are they going to be able to come every day? Should we plan it every week? Maybe we have some busy people, maybe we need to do something fortnightly. If you are targeting, your target audience is adults, they're not going to be coming during the day. They're going to be working. You have to think about, we need to plan this in the evening. And then also, maybe it's not very realistic to think that they're going to be able to attend very often. Or also, like what we're doing now is recording this session so that other people who aren't able to attend will still be able to get this content when we upload it to the YouTube page or the Facebook page. So it's about having that information accessible asynchronously. So on the time, because that's our most valuable asset is our time, and it's hard to allocate that time for things that aren't especially necessary. So these types of things, you know, for career development, it's not something that we need to do. It's something that would definitely benefit us. And we have to make that accessible. How long should this be? Our sessions are 1 hour. That seems like that's a pretty good length of time to understand everyone's level of attention. But maybe if your target audience are younger students, then you have to think about maybe 30 minutes is better, 45 minutes, because they're not going to be able to keep their attention that long. Or maybe they're going to have to stand up after a while. Maybe they've been sitting down all day. They have all this energy built up. And then how long will these sessions be for? Are you going to have them for 2 months? Are you going to have them ongoing? You're going to plan something for the whole year? What is going to be beneficial for the speaker or the person who is organizing it, and for the participants as well. So now we have all these ideas and we have all of these this information. How are we going to get our participants? So at America House Kyiv, and as I'm sure you guys have also noticed with TESOL Ukraine, some of the best way to get that information is by advertising on Facebook, because we all have Facebook accounts here, and it's easy to get that information. This event might interest you. So if you're planning, if you're not a part of an organization, that's fine, because on Facebook, it's very easy to create a group. And then if you give that link to send it to your students, then you can have them sign up on your Facebook page where you can start posting these events. And then if you wanted to go a step further, you could have them sign a registration form so that you can send the link to them. Or if you don't need to do a registration form, you can just have them have that Zoom link in the event description. So it's a lot of work that goes into behind this. But I mean, this one's pretty successful. There's 56 participants right now. So all of this hard work pays off because you guys all came. And so when you are planning these types of clubs, you have to think about you want a lot of people to join, or so that everyone feels like they have the access to this type of information, and you can improve. And if it's your English language skills, if it's your career development, in education, you want things to be shared. And so because we all use all of each other's resources, so why not share with each other? You can always learn, and someone always has a good idea. So those are the pretty easy ways for advertisement and registration. Okay, research and planning. I'm not sure how you guys go into research and planning with your classes or your clubs, and I'm interested in finding out. So if you want to, you can type in the chat box and let me know, how do you do your research? For your English language classes, yeah, maybe you can, if you have a core text, that's always very helpful. But when it comes to these smaller clubs, the way that I do it is I listen to a lot of podcasts. So that's actually the first thing that I do when I wake up in the morning, is I think about which class am I planning for, and I think about that topic, and I do a search on Spotify, because that's how I listen to podcasts. There are other ways you can do it, but I just type in that topic and I try to find something that's going to be relevant and accurate and like contemporary, new information. And then I just listen to that, and that's how I start my day. Maybe, you know, eating breakfast, or doing a little bit of cleaning around the house. I'm always trying to soak up that information, or sometimes I'll have to stop and take a note, or, you know, write something down. So this one, I really like when I'm planning for the conversation club, because we do talk a lot about a lot of heavy topics. And so this one is called Healing with David Kessler, and he's a doctor about grief. And he's written many books about dealing with grief and mourning for loved ones who have passed away, and very thought-provoking information. And sometimes it's very useful and stuff that I think that I would like to share with my participants. But there are also many other different ways of finding out the information. So because I have the experience as an English language fellow, you don't have to be a fellow to have access to this website. It's called American English, and I'm going to go to it in a second here after I describe the other ones. And you can see that it has lots of resources, English teaching forum, and lots of different materials for all different types of lessons that you could be planning. Also, I like to read a lot, and one of the books that I found very useful for the Education and Emergencies class that I have is Atlas of the Heart. And Atlas of the Heart is by Brene Brown, and she does a lot of research on emotions and understanding and navigating them. So she has a lot of great resources that are accompanied on her website that are thought-provoking questions and just infographics and everything that I like to relay that type of information to the participants. I watch a lot of TED Talks. This one is about, do schools kill creativity? That's a very interesting talk. And then the other resource that's on American English is the forum. So I'm just going to go through, because I think that we have some time for me to show you that website. So here, if you go to the website that Lottie just shared in the chat box, you can see all of the great resources. So if you go into the resources and programs tab, there are resources about teaching the 4 skills, US culture, music, games, all the webinars, MOOCs. So for example, if you go into the 4 skills, you can see everything is just really organized and easy to find by entering it in a keyword. So for example, I want to do some like games. What are going to be some fun games for speaking on here. And then there are over 304 search results. How to teach effectively with limited materials. How to compare and contrast variations for same and different cards. And they give you a little bit of a description about these activities, vocabulary games, lots of great resources on there. I also wanted to show you guys about English Teaching Forum because this has helped me a lot as well. And so, for example, last week, I was teaching about project-based learning, right? So we can search the forum journal resources here. Let's just type in project-based, and I press go. And hopefully it goes. Okay, stimulating writing through project-based tasks, exploring and expressing culture through project-based tasks. And then it takes you to that journal. You click on the text, the PDF. And then you have all of that great information. So this one was by Ramin Yazdanpana, and he was teaching in Vietnam, and he wanted to teach or explore and express their culture through project-based learning. And he gives a background. He talks about the framework that he went through, how he facilitated it. It even gives all of the information about the resources that he used as well. This is a presentation and scoring organizer, some definitions about stereotype, bias, prejudice, discrimination, racism, and these are great activities to go through. So hopefully that's useful for you. And then here's another website that I absolutely love for when I'm doing research on my clubs. It's called the Cult of Pedagogy. And this is great because they have a podcast, they have a blog, they have videos, and you can see all of the latest information, how to use backwards chaining to differentiate instruction, 8 principles for supporting students with ADHD, why teachers are leaving. So this is all great relevant information for us. This one was a podcast, and then talks about these things. And then you can see that I'm just going to go back to my presentation, that I found the information for this presentation on here as well. Yeah, that's the great part of doing these webinars, is hopefully finding some resources that are going to be helping us. So I hope you guys feel that way. I mean, most of these resources I found as an English language fellow, just from the other teachers and from the organization. So I think I covered all of those. Okay, so after you've done your research, well, this is kind of simultaneously to do the planning and the framework while you're doing your research. So what I do is, once I find the theme, I have all of my research ready to go, and then I open up a Google Slides document, and then I get to work. So it's always important to have a little warm up in the beginning, just to get the participants thinking in English. So what's really great is you can put a picture on there, you can ask a question, you can show a video. It's just something to, it's like the hook. It's when you're reading a book, for example, if the first sentence isn't interesting, you're not going to be into it. So it's also fun to play a little game. Sometimes I like to play categories or buzz or never have I ever, just fun little games like that only take about 10 minutes. And then you can get into your content. You can share all of that great information and then have a little bit of a controlled practice where you are working together, the teacher and the students together. And then the freer practice is when you would have things like group work or breakout rooms, like how we do in virtual classroom settings. And then a reflection and a wrap up. And usually I like to share a little, if you're going to continue the session, should always say, what's the next one going to be? What time is it going to be? What day is it going to be? And how to register, how to sign in. So the traditional lesson design plan was to identify the topic, plan a sequence of lessons, and then create an assessment. But in the book in 1998 by Grant Wiggins and Jay McTeague, I think is how you pronounce that, Understanding by Design, they thought that it would be more beneficial to the participants to design backwards. So that entails identifying what the students should know and should be able to do by the end of the learning cycle, then creating the assessment, and then planning the sequence of the lessons. So this is more when you're planning for teaching in the classroom, but it could still be very useful when you are planning your clubs, depending on if you decide if you're going to assess them or not, because in career clubs and in conversation clubs, you might be a little bit more relaxed and you might not have an assessment, or maybe your assessment is show me your CV at the end, and then you can kind of plan from there. But it's very useful to think of that before. And then I got I got this information from the Cult of Pedagogy website. And this is the 9 ways that online teaching should be different from face-to-face teaching. So this is in regard in facilitating and engagement. So, I mean, right now in a webinar, unfortunately, it's just me talking the whole time. But if you are having a conversation club, guess what? You want your students to be talking the whole time. That's the whole purpose there, is for you to guide them and to not to necessarily be there to correct all of their errors, but to be there to support them and to have that time for them to practice and guide them. So what they say, whoever they is, the teachers who decide everything about teacher training, is that the teacher talk time versus student talk time in a more facilitated classroom setting should be 20% the teacher and 80% the students. So next time you're teaching or you're having a club, just keep that percentage in the back of your mind. Am I doing all the talking, or am I giving the space for the students and the participants to talk? And then the 9 ways that online teaching should be different from face-to-face is it's separated into 2 categories: building community and communication, and instructional design. So in the first weeks of school, you should be devoted to building community and digital competency. So maybe after the last 2 years, we are very well versed in how to use a computer. But if you have students that you haven't had before, it's always a good idea to ask them how proficient and how competent they are in their ICT skills. Because if a student is learning how to work a computer online and to connect to the class, they're spending a lot of time doing that and not as much as other students who are more proficient in computers and technology skills. to actually be working on the assessment or the task at hand. Building community as well is, developing that rapport, that relationship with your students. And you don't get to see them in person, and maybe, how we used to see each other in the hallways and say, hey, how was your weekend? How is it going? So we have to, and our time is so limited online. So we have to make sure that we're still allocating time to build that rapport with our students. Communication with parents needs to be more thorough, streamlined, and predictable. This may be not so much for adult classes, but if you're teaching younger students, especially early learners, then the parents need to be involved. How are you going to email them? Are you going to have a Facebook group? Are you going to have a Telegram, WhatsApp channel? Have to do that. Community and connection needs to be a priority for teachers too, to stay connected to our colleagues. We don't have that opportunity when we're teaching online as much. And if our administration is not planning time for the teachers to get together and just have a debrief or a feedback, then you have to try to figure out time to do that yourself. And you might be feeling tired and feeling crazy from being online for so many hours per day. But if you could schedule some time to continue connecting to your colleagues, that would be very beneficial as well. So in terms of instructional design, still needs to be a collaborative effort between the teachers, and the face-to-face time should be for active learning. So what's meant by that is the idea of blended learning and hybrid classrooms is to take us away from saying, okay, read the chapter in this book. The students shouldn't be reading a chapter in the book when you're in the virtual classroom. They could be doing that on their own time. That's kind of a waste of someone's time. Just like how you think that, the phrase that this meeting could have been an email, you don't want to waste someone's time. It's very fatiguing to be on the computer all day and to be in meetings, and especially face-to-face. Content needs to be simplified and slowed down. So when students are learning new things, it might take them a little bit longer because they don't have that in-person component where you might be able to see, the person's face and to have that questioned or puzzled look on their face to see if they're not catching on to something. Maybe the students don't put their cameras on. How are you going to even know if they're there? There was, I don't remember, maybe it was, I'm pretty sure it was one of these TESOL Ukraine webinars that I heard some really great advice from one of the presenters. She said that just give me a reaction if you're still there, or they play a kind of a game where if this fact applies to you, turn your camera on or turn your camera off, something just to check for if there's still life. I thought that was very good. Instruction should be easy to find, explicit, and multimodal. Traditional grading. Oh, a finger dance. What is that? Traditional grading practices should take a backseat to feedback, and summative assessment should focus on creation. So summative assessment, not meaning fill in the blank or multiple choice. It's more using your critical thinking skills and your creativity. Also, I think I skipped over this one that is also very important. The traditional grading practices should take a backseat to feedback. Instead of going through and correcting every single mistake on somebody's writing, you could just have a conversation with them. Instead, try to schedule some time for feedback, because that could be a better use of time. I think because of after the lessons learned of teaching online for 2 years is you realize how valuable that time is in between when you are connected face to face. And how this applies to the Conversation Club and the Career Development Club is, yeah, just make sure that you are making use of that face-to-face time and not so much focusing on the smaller details of, you know, answering questions or try to make it more engaging, I guess. I'm interested in finding out, what is that finger dance? Oh, maybe, I think is it the name Katya? Or I don't know how to pronounce that one. Are we able to unmute? Maybe you can tell us what that is or describe it in the chat box. Okay, we'll wait and see. So just a few more slides to get through. Just wanted to let you know that engagement is also very important. So it's not just, you know, the person who's watching the Conversation Club online, it's not like a TV show for them. They're more active in it. And so the way that we do that at America House, especially for the creative writing program, is to have a page on Notion. And so you might be familiar if you already use Google Classroom or Moodle or Blackboard to record this information with your students. But if you don't have access to those websites for a creative writing program or a conversation club, and you want the participants to continue to be engaged, Notion is a great website, and it's you can use a free version of it, and you can upload things and download things and put links and have a link to a calendar. So that's really great. And then also the engagement to have those groups on Telegram or on WhatsApp, just as mentioned before for the parents. You can still have them for the students as well. When I was teaching a class for the pre-service teachers in Morocco, we had a page on Facebook group. And then that's where everyone posted things, because after taking into consideration, after using Google Classroom before, the engagement was not very good. And that could have been my fault as well for not checking up on it. But it's so hard when we have so many things that we're checking up on and so many websites that we have to be aware of all day. So the ones that they're checking anyways, like Facebook and Telegram, might be better options because it's not adding something extra. It's like something that they're already using. Okay, we've made it to the final step. Is everyone still awake? Give me a thumbs up or say hi in the chat box again if you're still with us. So we have the recording, monitoring, and evaluation. So how we can record our students. The best part of being a teacher, maybe not the best part, but one of the good parts is that we can put the work on the students to make less work for us. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, an example of this would be, instead of grading the students, we make them grade each other, make them grade themselves by giving them rubrics and by giving them framework. So for example, if you're having a conversation club and you say, all right, I want you guys to be able to talk about your different activities. You're talking about different verbs if it's a beginner level class, and take a look at this one that's on the top left. Then you can see, you know, if they're able to ask and answer questions about these specific types of verbs by having this kind of rubric framework that they can fill in the answers, because that shows that they're understanding. And then once they fill it in, you can tell them, okay, now go to your breakout room and practice those questions. Another way that I monitor to see if the participants are understanding and participating is by using Jamboards. So Jamboards are also great. It's a Google, if you're not familiar with it, you can just type Jamboard in a Google search. It's a Google website. And it's a collaborative website where you can have lots of people working on at the same time, just jotting down different things. So in our career development club, we talked about our statement of purpose. And then everyone typed in their statement of purpose and put it on this little sticky Post-it note Jamboard. And then we were able to see everyone's personal statements. So that was cool. And then in terms of evaluating, finally, the last step here, at the end of all of my classes, I always give a Google form and I ask them, what did you think? How did you like it? And what are improvements that we could make? Because we're always trying to have a better lesson. We're always trying to figure out what's a really good way to make our students learn in a way that's fun and engaging. And the best way to do that is to get that continuous feedback from them. And you might not have the time to have a conversation with everyone. So surveys is a really good way where people can get that information. You can get that information from everyone, and it puts it in a really nice way for you to access all of the results. And that's what I do. So I didn't tell you the last secret step. This one is just as important as all of the rest one, and it's to have fun. Some of the best advice that I got when I was first starting out teaching was that if it's not interesting for you, it's not going to be interesting for anyone. So I hope you guys are able to have fun, make it interesting, and yeah, get those clubs going.